All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode, the first log, or first, whatever video of the Philly Educator, right? Philly Educator. And my name is Taj Utsi. I am a retired, award-winning Philly Educator, 25 years of experience in the school district of Philadelphia. And like I said, I retired back in June of 2025, and I feel good. I feel good. Today is the first day of school in Philadelphia where hundreds of thousands of children go back into the classroom, and tens of thousands of teachers, educators, administrators, staff members are going back to get another year started. And I'm thankful that I'm done with that. I'm done with that. I'm excited. But being a retired teacher, I already had in mind like I wanted to do a channel like this. I wanted to come and just share my experiences as a educator, and like we said in the intro video, that you can get a better insight. So this video is just about why I got into education. Truly believe that those individuals who teach and love teaching, they're called to do it. Because I say that because everyone doesn't, some are in the teaching profession, but they don't love it. And we'll get into that down the line again. But there are individuals that are in the teaching profession like myself when I first started out, and several years prior to retirement. I would truly loved it, and I still love teaching, right? But I don't want you to just narrow teaching down to in a classroom. But if you're working as a teacher with children, and something that you're passionate about, I believe that's your calling. And for me, right, I always loved school. I always loved school growing up. In the summertime I played and whatnot, did my thing, but I couldn't wait for school to start. I just love school. I love learning. You know, I went to Philly public schools growing up. I grew up in Philly, right? Born and raised here, South Philly. And I grew up going to public schools all my life, right? Went to Durham Elementary, no longer here in Philly. That was on 16th and Lombard in Philly. From there, I went to Pierce Middle School, 24th and Christian, no longer there as well, shut down. Then from there, I went to Central High School off of Ogance and Olney Avenues. And but growing up in elementary and middle school, I loved it. I loved school. I was always at the top of my class, always participating, quick learner. School just came easy for me. I was a straight A student. I remember I got my first C like in 8th grade. And when I got and to this day I remember like why it happened. Like that teacher gave like two graded assignments, and I believe one of them, the average out to like a 75, and I knew I was gonna get it. But when I even seen it on my report card, I had like all A's and that one C in science, and that like my jaw dropped. Even my teacher at the time, my 8th grade, he was my 7th and 8th grade reading teacher, and I'll get more into that as well as why I became a teacher. But he saw me the way I reacted to it, and he was like, he just said it to the whole class, like, you're looking at your report card grades, and you're staring at it. It's not going to change anything, right? And that's another thing we'll get into later about grading system, right? But just sticking with the topic. So, like I said, I always loved school, loved it. When I got to high school, that's when things kind of shifted for me. Like I was more in the high school, like I mean, I went to class, and those that know Philly or familiar with Philly, grew up in Philly or lived in Philly, whatever, they know like Central High School is like the best high school in the city. And I'm not just saying that because I went there, but academically, that and like Masterman, those two was like the best high school. But Central was like it was really like the best. Like you say Central, like you know, it's like known, right? And even like the alumni, like if you run into people that went to Central, like it's like you know high school. Like you can be in different years of graduation, but the bond they have that bond. Like the alumni have that bond. Like I was 253 as the 253rd graduating class, Central High School, which I graduated in 1994. So we don't say like at Central, we don't say class of 94. We just say 253, right? So, but when I got to high school, that's when things kind of shifted for me, where it was like, all right, it's a whole lot of people here that just as smart, if not smarter than I was, that I am, I am or was at the time. And I was a little intimidated because coming from like public school, like middle school, Central was a public school, but coming from middle school and elementary school, I was always the top. But now you got a bunch of like top students in there. So it was like a little intimidating. And the work wasn't that, I mean, it was a nice workload and everything, but I just didn't put forth the effort. I kind of lost interest. I just did the bare minimum just to, get by. And even like in ninth grade, like I had to go to summer school because I had a teacher. I was in a mentally gifted program, so we called it MG biology. I had an MG biology course, and at the time, I was like 13, yeah, like 13, 14. So, and them in the 90s. So I'm like on this whole like Malcolm X type of thing. So I thought the teacher was racist, right? I thought the teacher was racist because he had said all. It was a smaller class because it was a mentally gifted class, and he had all the black kids. It was like four of us out of like maybe 20, 23 kids, maybe 25 kids, but we was all in the back. And at the time, I'm thinking, he putting us in the back because we black, but not even realizing he put us in the back because all our last names was towards the end of the alphabet. But in my mind, so I really didn't like that class. And as a result, I didn't put forth no effort. So I had to go to summer school, whatever. But I say that to say, like, that's when things kind of changed for me with my not necessarily my love for learning, but my love for school. Because learning and schooling are to me are two different things. Like schooling, I've come to realize that schooling is a program. It's a program to create workers. It's a program to take away creativity from children and have them just become rote memorizers and obedient, you know, compliant, where they're not allowed to be creative or be children. Where you're sitting in the class all day long in rows, and it's like that's just humans weren't designed to just be sitting all day. But again, these topics I'm going to get more into as time goes on. But like I said, so schooling and learning are two different things. Like learning never stops. Schooling stops. Learning is all your life. Schooling is for the first 13 years, and in some cases, longer than that, depending on if you do higher education, right? College and bachelor's or whatever, right? But learning never stops. So I always had a love for learning, but I kind of lost my love for schooling when I got to high school. And then my grades, like I said, I was just doing the bare minimum. Go through 4 years of high school, graduate, and I just followed the program of going on to college. That's the program also. So I ended up going to Howard University down in Washington D.C. and I was going for business accounting because I always loved numbers. I love math, and I still to this day love math. So, but when I got to Howard, it was like, all right, I only went there because it was the HBCU. It's Howard, right? Just the name Howard. And again, like I said, that's another program because a lot of people, young people go to school based upon the name of the school, the prestige of the school. But when you really get there, you're pretty much learning the same thing that you would at, an in-state school or, whatever. Like, but it's all good. Each their own personal preference. But when I was down there, you know, coming from Central going to Howard, Central was like really like challenging with the workload, right? So going to Howard, it was like really easy for me. I ain't really, it was easy for me, right? Because Central was a college prep high school, so going to Howard, the transition wasn't that bad. But the major that I selected, I just kind of selected it because, you know, just because. And at that age, I just young people really don't know. Most majority of young people don't really know what they want to do, and that was me. But I remember sitting in one of my classes, and we had a business class. We had in this class we had to wear suits to the class, like business wear apparel. So I had my suit. We go in this class in the suit, and I'm sitting in the class. It was a big lecture hall, and I'm sitting in the class, and I'm thinking, man, this is not what I want to do. Like, serious, I'm sitting there thinking, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do this. And then, and this is where I'm talking about the calling, right? I hear a voice, and the voice said, you're going to go to Temple and become a teacher. And I'm looking like, where'd that come from? And I ain't really think nothing of it. So time goes on. I finished the semester or whatever. Matter of fact, yeah, I have finished the semester. I believe it. Went back home, came back. I'm forget the timeline of this, but I heard that voice. But not too long after hearing that voice, I only did one semester at Howard. Went back for another like half a semester, and then I couldn't go no more because of the funds. Right, my mom, we couldn't afford to, the tuition. So after hearing that voice, it wasn't like I was upset that I had to leave because I remember that voice that I heard. So I go back to Philly, and this was probably like in February, March. So I applied for Temple, and when I applied, I like kind of like didn't include my transcripts from Howard. So when I got the response, they was like denied. So I said, nah, this is something not right. So I called them and told them my situation, and they said, oh, well, just give us your transcripts because they didn't want. I guess they didn't want to see like a gap from high school up until that point. So I sent my transcript. They like accepted me right away. So that's what I mean. Like that voice that I heard, and I know now that was God because at the time and that point in my life, right, I really like I didn't believe there was a God. In my mind, the black man is God, and I was God. So God was dealing with me down Howard, and I know that was the reason why, you know, I had to get away because of the environment I was in my neighborhood, right? It was like a really major distraction for me. So I know why I was had to go to Howard, right? Because that's when my relationship with the Lord began, really. But then, come back home, apply for Temple, go to Temple, and Temple was an excellent school. I loved Temple. I loved it, and one thing I loved about it was the diversity. And I'm not saying nothing wrong with HBCUs, right? But to me, the world is not one ethnic group of people, right? It's not one skin tone of people. The world is very diverse. So going to Temple and even at Central, that was a very diverse school, right? And then Going to Howard, it was just, predominantly African American. But going to Temple, like I said, the diversity is something I love. The fact that it was local, I mean, I just commuted back and forth, right? So the education program was excellent. I mean, I really love Temple University. And so I go to Temple, and in the beginning, I kind of like, my grades wasn't like they should have been because I was like distracted. I had friends I went to high school with, right? They was at Central with me, and they was at Temple. So I got caught up with them my first like year, and was like not going to class, and it was like a mess, man. So I was put on like academic probation. That's what the wake up call was. Then so I look, distanced myself from those individuals and just started focusing on my grades, on my studies, make dean's lists, several, like many times, graduated with honors, and now before graduation we're in the student teaching. But like I said, teaching is a calling, and that voice that I heard was my calling to teaching, and that's why I was so passionate about it for maybe like the first, like maybe up to like the 22nd, 23rd year, right? Because the last 2 years is when I really started losing my love for teaching, and that's why I like got out. But I love teaching. I love working in the classroom with the kids, right? And another reason, like one of the main reasons I became a teacher, was because of two teachers that I had in middle school. And I remember like writing, doing an application, and I wrote about those teachers, like because you had to write an essay, and I wrote about them. Seventh and eighth grade math teacher and reading teacher, Mr. Chip, Frank Chipperoni, we call him Mr. Chip, and Miss Dunham, and those like were teachers that were very influential to me. And even when I became a teacher, like Miss Dunham, she was very supportive of me in the beginning of my year, and then like even throughout my year, my years of teaching. So yeah, but I definitely, love teaching. I loved it, man. It's just that the system, the public school system, is doing these children a disservice. It's a disservice. And like I said, in the beginning, first like 20 some years, first 20, 21 years of, well, maybe even maybe the first 20 some years, especially at the beginning, like those were my best years, like ones I really loved, because I can be like as creative as I wanted to be with the kids. Like there was, like we had curriculum, but the freedom was there for us to like collaborate with other teachers and do a lot of things. But then like towards the end of my career, that's when they began to like box us in with things. So that's why I kind of like was like, I can't do this anymore, because at one point of my career, I just kind of felt like I was contributing to the disservice that the system is uh, doing to these students and the parents. I will always have that thought in the back of my mind. But I said, no, let me not dwell on that. But then as time went on, that it got stronger and stronger because of the things I kept seeing. But I'll get into a lot of those things down the line in other videos. But yeah, but I feel as though I was called to teaching. I was called to it, and even while I was at Temple University, we had to do like we had your regular classes, but then we went towards in like I think maybe my junior and my senior years. That's when we started going out into the field and doing practicums, where we would go into the schools and work more hands on with teachers in the classrooms. And I remember having one practicum where we went to a school in South Philly called named Childs. And I remember the professor, he was a practicum teacher, right? And I remember him, name is Dr. Gallagher. And we all had like, I forget the number, but it might have been like 10 to 15 of us. But we like there was like several of us in different classrooms, maybe two or three of us in a classroom. And so we would like take turns by the week or whatever teaching. And we always knew our schedule, so we could prepare in advance with the cooperating teacher in the room. They would give us the topics that we were going to be teaching throughout the time that we were there. We would prepare our lessons. Again, it was very creative. You can be very creative when I first started teaching. So it was a time when uh, one of the one of the student teachers, right, the practicum students that I work with in my group in the classroom, I think they didn't show up, and we had to like somebody still had to do it. So he asked who would volunteer. Nobody said anything, so I volunteered, right? And I like went in there off the like last minute notice and did my thing. And I'm not saying that to, you know, toot my own horn, but that's just what it was. And even afterwards, the practical teacher, Dr. Gallagher, was like, right, he said, look, you're gifted. Right? He said, pretty much, you say you have a gift. And that was like the first time that I really recognized it. Because I do believe, like I say, teaching is a calling, and I do believe I have that gift. And I'm not just saying that just to say it, right? I believe it. I know it. I know it. So like that like really built my confidence, and like going into like after the practicum, then we had to do like student teaching. And I did student teaching again in South Philly. That's where I grew up. I grew up in South Philly. And the school I did my student teaching at was Barrett Middle School. It's no longer shut down now. But I had like the best experience doing this student teaching. And I forget how many, it might have been like 8 weeks. But that was like the best experience I have had. One of the most memorable experiences that I had during my career of teaching. One of the most memorable of my student teaching career, my student teaching experience. And I had like an awesome cooperating teacher. Her name was Jen Schill. And I don't know if she's still teaching or not, but she was great. And it was a fifth grade class. It was self-contained. So she taught every subject. I mean, she was awesome, man. I don't know how old she was at the time. She probably was in her maybe late 20s or early 30s, but she was great. She was like the best. Seriously, she was good. She had good control of the classroom. She was real down to earth. She was friendly with the kids, but she wasn't like their friend. And that's one thing that I learned in observing her, where you want to be friendly, but you still want to command respect. And that's what she did. The kids knew, okay, Michelle is cool, but we know what lines not to cross. And it was some like fifth grade is like a year where they like they really like very dependent. But yeah, she was awesome, man. So I learned a lot from her, and you know that just that experience with her more increased my love for teaching. Like this is what I want to do from my career. And she was very like helpful. Like she observed, she gave me great feedback, constructive feedback with things I did well and things I can improve on. You know, just observing her classroom management, it was awesome, man. And like I said, she was very creative. And like I said, we, you know, at that time we can be very creative. We can be very creative, and I did a lot of like activities that she like gradually like allowed integrated me into the uh, teaching experience. A lot of activities, things that I brought to the table that she was like impressed by, and you know, so it was cool, man. And then like the children, like they became like attached to me, like you know, it was like a bond being developed because I'm near like I was there like every day for like 8 weeks, and that's not a lot of time, but still, it's enough time where relationships can form, and especially amongst the boys. And that's another topic, you know, I want to touch on about the influence and the impact of having a male teacher, particularly an African American male teacher in inner city schools where the population is primarily African American, right? So I'm gonna get into that in another video. But you know, I say that to say, like at the end of the 8 weeks, they did like a little surprise thing for me. Like they like one of so I had a co-op. The Jen Shield was a co-op teacher, and then I had a teacher, and then there was another building person that was like my point person, like that I would go to check in with every day, like a advisor, and she worked in the building. So she kind of called me out of the room to talk to me. You know, they was all planned, but then it was like my last day, I think it was. And then when I came back, that's when they threw a surprise party for me. It was like surprise. So yeah, it was, man. And like I had my like own little table, my own area table, and like all the kids came over to me. I'm sorry, but like it just shows you like teachers really do leave an impression on students' lives. Those that are like that love what they're doing, right? Because students know when you really like care. They know. They know. And I'm telling you, I know from experience seeing being in a classroom and seeing teachers who really cared and those that didn't care. Students know. They know. But they like all came over to me like one by one, just putting cards down on my table that I made. And I was like fighting back tears because it was like, wow, just like I'm doing now. And I still had these cards, right? I still had these cards that they made. But it's like things like that that let me know like this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I made the right decision. I made the right decision. So that was my purpose of becoming a teacher. Like for anybody that's, you know, contemplating a career, it don't even have to be teaching, but a career. Whatever it is, it don't even matter what it is. Like you want to make sure that you love it. You want to make sure that when you whatever you decide you want to do, that you're not doing it for a paycheck, but you're doing it because that's your your passion, your calling from the natural perspective. You're doing it because you feel like this is your purpose from a natural perspective. Right? You don't just want to do something to make money. You want to do it because this is what you love to do. And if I wasn't getting paid to do it, I would still do it. That's how I felt about teaching. That's how I felt about teaching. So this is this again, first video. I got many more to come, many more stories to share, many more tales to tell. But again, thank you for joining in to my channel, and you've been listening to the Philly Educator. Peace.